Morning all. So we have been told that on the Board of Governors call yesterday, these are the proposed divisions we're going to be looking at. And immediately the discussion becomes one of, well, these divisions are stronger than these divisions and which one's better than which. And it is an interesting discussion to be had. First off, your group of death is this one here on the right. So Buffalo has improved on paper, right? Well, now, in order to make the playoffs, they're in a division with Philly, Islanders, Washington, Boston, Pittsburgh, Rangers, and Devils. So they don't have to beat Detroit, which they probably can. They don't have Florida. They don't have Ottawa. So the road forward for Buffalo is definitely more difficult. Now, how I rank these teams is by my current power rankings. So I went through my power rankings. I said, all right, and I went through one by one by one. And what's interesting is there are some big divides. There's a big divide between Dallas and LA. So the argument you can have about this division, whether they call it the West or whatever they call it, the Bettman 1 division, Vegas, Colorado, St. Louis, and Dallas are the good teams. We know that. And then you have LA, Anaheim, Arizona, and San Jose. And we're not sure which one of those four is going to rise up. And yet, there will be at least one of them you would think that would. Now, this division's interesting because I think the big drop is probably between first and second. Now, not to say that from, second down is bad or anything. And you could argue that Chicago and Detroit are the only teams that are really, truly rebuilding in that division. Tampa Bay should win it, though. And Carolina, Columbus, Nashville, Minnesota, and Florida, you would think would be the teams that are going to be in the mix. But what's interesting is Chicago and Detroit being in the same division. In fact, this is an old Norris division you got going on right here. You got the Wings, the Hawks, and the Wild all in the same division. Kind of a Norris division feel. It's missing Toronto, and it is missing St. Louis. I'm actually kind of surprised that St. Louis is in this division, because if, let's just say all teams are in 31 home ranks. Humor me. So let's just pretend that teams are going to be in their home ranks, everything's going to be hunky-dory. St. Louis's travel schedule is a problem. Now, at least these three teams in California are all in the same spot. So you can go in, and if they're going to be back-to-backs, that'd be a 6-game road trip through California. That's a 6-game road trip through California, though. And then probably throw in an Arizona set there. We may be looking at long road trips, because, again, they've been talking about doing back-to-back games to reduce travel. So St. Louis goes into LA, plays them on a Monday, plays them on Wednesday, goes then to Anaheim, plays them on, say, Friday and Saturday. That kind of thing, right? So the less travel should help. It should help the players. It may change the whole home ice advantage narrative, though, because that first game, sure, they have home ice advantage, but second game, same arena, and if we don't have fans in attendance, which we likely don't at the start of the year in most, if not all, locations, is going to change the narrative. Now, Canada's kind of there's some bias, and I'm gonna straight out say it as a Canadian fan. The reason I'm wearing Canucks for this. Most Canadian fans are biased in favor of the idea that this Canadian division is made up of all these really good, strong contenders kind of thing, or at the very least, they're all really good playoff teams. And yet, over any given season, you can see as few as 0 Canadian teams make the playoffs in certain seasons, and sometimes it's as many as 5. Now, I do think that the amount of hype on this side of the border is understandable, as Canadian hockey fans tend to be passionate 365 days a year about hockey, which is different from most areas of the U.S. I don't know how strong I see this division, but I do know that the only line I can put in here in my eyes, I can do it in green, I'm going to do it in the same color, is between Winnipeg and Ottawa. I do not see a clear-cut favorite. For instance, if you're looking at this and you're going, wow, he's got the Leafs at 4th on the power rankings in the Canadian division, that's something. And yet, these 4 teams are all back-to-back-to-back-to-back. And I don't see a team running away with the Canadian division. The question I have is, so we've got Calgary here, or Montreal, Ottawa, or Edmonton, Toronto, Vancouver, Winnipeg. Any of these 6, I would not put them in the same category as Vegas, Tampa, or Philly. Now, if you can say, well, they're in the same categories definitely as Philly, okay, but you got the Capitals, 2018 Cup, Bruins, who were in the finals in 2019, the 2016-2017 Cup winners here in Pittsburgh. There's a lot of championships there. Oh, and a team coached by Barry Trotz and the New York Islanders. So I do think there'll be a lot of hype for the Canadian division, especially since they will not be playing teams from other divisions. None of these teams are playing outside of their own division, of course. But it means that it is possible we will see a Canadian team get a really gaudy record of like 30-10 to start the season kind of thing. And people will be planning a parade. And, you know, if it's Vancouver, Edmonton, any of these cities, if you see a record like that, fans will be ready. Media will definitely be hyping up. Is this the year we finally see a cup in Canada? And we won't truly know whether or not it's a mirage until you get to playoff time. Now, in this division, honestly, I don't see a divide until Pittsburgh to the Rangers. And I'm going to say this straight out. The Rangers, if Lafreniere hits right away, if Kakko takes that next step, and if Shesterkin's as good as he's supposed to be, blue line holds, it's a number of ifs, but they're all possible. And if all those things happen, the Rangers could very well find themselves much higher on this board. Buffalo and New Jersey, odds are in this division it's kind of tough. And then the next question that comes out of this, and obviously they haven't discussed this in some formal manner yet, at least we haven't seen it leak out, is, so how are the playoffs going to work? So let's just say we do four in each division across the board. So Toronto, Calgary, Montreal, Oilers. I'm just using this as an example. This is not, I think predicting where everybody's going to finish in the divisions, I think is going to be very difficult. Because again, the Canadian division are all so close together. But are we going to see it where you'd play within your division for each round? Keep in mind the playoffs are going to be in about May, right? And that's where things should be starting to get to a point where you can have fans in attendance. It might be better for the NHL to do a playoff the same as they did this year. You can have the top 2 teams in each division automatically qualify. And then these 16 here having a cross tournament. So you could seed them 1 through 16 however you want, and have the teams at the top get a bye. And then the other 16, you could have a best 2 out of 3, best 3 out of 5. I think best 2 out of 3 works best, because then you're giving these teams a bit of a rest, and these teams aren't going through that much more hockey, comparatively speaking. But I think something along those lines might work better, because I think we can all agree these divisions are not all created equal. And then if you're a Rangers fan here and you're looking at, let's say you're looking up at these other 5 teams, you can still look at the play-in round and go, well, that's fine, because we may not be able to get into a top 4 spot here. But in the crossover, let's say they get Nashville. We're going to get Nashville. We think we can beat Nashville. Pittsburgh looks and goes, we get Vancouver. We can beat Vancouver. And then it means that for the strongest divisions, you can then have a tournament where they're crossed against one another, and that could work. Because, yeah, these divisions aren't equal. I think it's easy to overrate the differential. The only one that to me I think is, I mean, there's these two are somewhat problematic, but then that would seem to be kind of ignoring the fact that there are a couple of teams in Canada that finished below the top 16 last year. And yeah, I don't know. There are actually 3 that finished out of the top 16, right? Because you got Ottawa, Winnipeg, and Montreal. Montreal should be better. Indications are Montreal should be better. You look at what they did against Pittsburgh, and then you look at their series against Philly. This year should be better for them. But how much better is it going to get? So, yeah, this isn't, official predictions or anything. This is just the power rankings don't count anyways. How can you have this power rankings then? Oh, no, never mind. But, yeah, I'll start doing previews soon based on the idea that these are the divisions. And so we'll see how it goes. But it's going to be interesting because I've got a couple of annuals now, like yearbooks, and I'm imagining those yearbooks are going to have everybody positioned by the regular everyday divisions, and now we're not going to be in those everyday divisions. So when I talk about that kind of stuff in the previews, I'll have to have some kind of an allowance for something. But I'm going to start getting those done because January 13th is a month and 3 days away. And so I think now might be a good time to get into some season preview stuff. Again, the financials are settled. This seems to be settled. While Frank Saravelli reported there was some pushback, and don't question him on that because he'll get mad at you on Twitter. He can get really angry. But the idea that there was some pushback, there just wasn't very much. They knew they couldn't argue against the division realignment because it's going to happen. There's really anything they can do about it. And I want to say, too, that if you're a Canadian hockey fan, enjoy this because it's not lasting past this season. The travel costs in Canada are an issue, and then you have the fact that these are all different time zones. Players don't like crossing time zones for every game. And so the idea of these being the divisions going forward just doesn't work for that reason. I'm really surprised at this division and how potentially messy that could be travel-wise too. Minnesota looks kind of out of place. Chicago looks kind of out of place being the same division as Tampa and Carolina, and yet Nashville's not that far from some of those locations. Just they're in a different time zone because, all right. So we'll see how it works out. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Which division you think is going to be the strongest? Which division you think is going to be the weakest? All that other stuff. And hey, thank you guys so much for watching, for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.